Welcome to this ChannelX Leaders interview. Delighted to be joined today by Scot Wingo, who I think, Scott, I've known you for the best part of 20 years, if I'm right. How are you and welcome?
Yeah, it's been a minute, as the kids would say. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Chris.
So you're co-founder of ReFiBuy, but before we get into that, which I'm really interested in, for those that don't know you, just let us know a bit about your history, because it goes way, way back to the very early days of eBay with Auction Rover, and then with Channel Advisor, which is ended up as Rhythm nowadays. But tell us a bit about your history and what you've been doing in the e-commerce world.
Yeah, so the quick summary is I have an engineering background, so I am a nerd or a geek at heart, whatever phrase you want to use. And then I've also a multi-time founder, so I'm on my fifth company. My first company was in the developer world, so C++ components. My second company, to your point, was Auction Rover. So this is the very early days of the internet and e-commerce. I started that company in 98 and then sold it in 99. And it was an auction search engine. In the earliest days of e-commerce, we had more auction sites than fixed price sites. If people, no one believes me when I tell them that, but it's true. You were there, and at our height, we were searching 200 auction sites at Auction Rover, and so we had an auction search engine, a bidding agent, interestingly enough, and then because we're going to talk about today's agents are different than those agents back then. And then we had a selling tool because we thought people would want to sell across auction sites. We sold that company to a search engine called GoTo.com, who changed its name to Overture, and they got acquired by Yahoo. But in that transition, the .com bubble burst, and you and I lived through that as well. And two companies were really left remaining, eBay and Amazon. So when you only have one auction site, you don't really need an auction search engine. But our seller tool became very popular, and we spun that out in 2001. The CEO of Overture called me one day and said, there's these two Stanford grads, and they've started this weird company called Google, and we're going to go compete with them very heavily, and we need to close down your group because we're going to go buy all these other search engines like Dogpile and Ask Jeeves and all this kind of stuff. And it sounded like a terrible idea to me because Google had built a better mousetrap, and you don't fight a better mousetrap by buying a bunch of broken mousetraps, but that's what they chose to do. And we spun the company out in 2001 as ChannelAdvisor. So I'm founder and CEO of ChannelAdvisor, all the way raised 90 million in venture capital, went public in 2013. And then in 2015, I stayed on the board, but was no longer day-to-day operations. My COO president became CEO, and he ran things until we merged with Commerce Hub. And then subsequently then I was no longer involved at all. And then a year later, I think they rebranded to Rhythm. So that's my history in e-commerce. I've been in since the 97 to 99 timeframe is when all this started.
And that leaves a little bit of a gap between then and now, which you've also been doing something interesting with Spiffy, which is not exactly e-commerce, but still internet booking related. Tell us a little bit about Spiffy.
Yeah, the idea for Spiffy is the one way to look at what we've seen in e-commerce is I'm a big proponent. There's a famous venture capitalist, Andreessen Horowitz, which is Mark Andreessen, and he invented one of the first web browsers. And he has this software will eat the world. And as a software person, I love that because that's good for me. I have an EV, and it's got everything is software in our cars now. Even your refrigerator, your appliances have software in them. So I was thinking around, one way to look at what you and I have experienced with e-commerce is the physical goods have gone digital. Analog retail stores, Main Street, as you guys would say, has kind of gone into a digital. Then if you look at the GDP, I don't know about UK, but over here, 1/3 of consumer stuff is products, 2/3 is services. So I started thinking about what would a digital service look like? And then I had my first Uber experience, and I got to see what a first digital experience looked like. And I previously had invested in some car washes. I love cars. I'm a car enthusiast. I don't get my hands dirty. I like to drive cars. I'll just say that.
Me too. I've got a Jaguar, so that says it all.
Ah, nice, a Jaguar. Yes, very British of you. And do you have a convertible or you got a hard top?
No, hard top. It's too cold in the UK for a convertible. It's about 5 days a year you'd have a convertible.
Yeah, and the other days it would rain and leak. So all that came together, and I started thinking about what would it look like if we reimagined car care. So you got your Jaguar there. Let's say you wanted it cleaned, an oil change, tires, something like that. What if we Uberified that experience, meaning it came to you and you could, through an app, you could schedule it and have it taken care of. So I started Spiffy with that idea. We started with car washing, and then we expanded into tires, oil, and then the unlock for us, it's a consumer business, and it looks like a consumer business, but consumer is now like less than basically 10%. What ended up happening is large fleet operators love this because they're incented to keep the fleet running. And prior to COVID, before labor cost went crazy, they would just have one of the skilled laborers, be it a plumber, electrician, whatever it is, Amazon driver, they'd have them take it to a service center. But that's wildly inefficient because they're not generating revenue and it's costing you money, and they're not really incented to get it turned around, and they're usually doing it during working hours. So what we do at Spiffy, that's the large part, is we go to fleets and say, hey, we can work after hours. So after 1700 or whenever you're done with whatever you're doing, we'll work a second or third shift and do everything you need to that vehicle so the next morning it's ready to go out there and keep your fleet 100% operational without you burning any labor or having any downtime. And that's B2B is always easier than consumer, and that has really resonated out there with businesses.
And now you're back in a really exciting area, because I think it was March this year you announced ReFiBuy, which is for those that haven't seen yet, cutting edge of AI and agentic AI. So tell us, first of all, where does the name come from, and what are you hoping to do there?
Yeah, you'll like this story. So one of the first eBay Lives, I don't even think it was called an eBay Live. There was let's call it an eBay meetup. I think it even predates the first eBay Live. You would know this better than I do because you've been to all these things and you have a better memory than I do. But it was in Vegas, and I'm in the room with maybe 100 people eating a shrimp cocktail or something like that. And this relatively short French-looking guy comes up, and it's one of those tall tables where you stand and eat. And I'm standing there eating a shrimp, and it turns out. And I was a bit of a Pierre Omidyar fan, so I recognized him once he got close to me. I was like, "Are you Pierre?" And he was like kind of surprised I had recognized him. I don't think he was. This is super early days of eBay. I don't think he had kind of quite gotten as famous as he ultimately would become. He tried to go to eBay Live, and he would just get swamped. So he didn't really go to a lot of stuff. He said, "Yes, I am," and then we had a really nice chat, kind of like you would with just anyone at one of these industry events. And what stuck to me was, I was like, well, where do you think the future of eBay is going to take things? And to set the stage, this is when eBay was just listings. And then you would, I think PayPal was just getting started, and you would say, I want to buy that thing. And then you would have to figure out, you would send money in the mail or figure out a money order. It was very hard to pay for things back then.
This is the biggest laugh of all, though. In those days, eBay didn't even have pictures on them, no images. You're just buying up a line of text.
Yeah, I've got a good story on that one too. And he said, as long as we can help people research, find, and buy, we will be in good shape. And then he went on, he had spent a lot of time thinking about, there's kind of like 3 ways that people are going to shop online. And here's how we think about it. And we're really kind of just listings help, is where we're starting, but we want to have all this other stuff. So I've always liked that framework of, this is how consumers shop. It goes back a little, you can kind of trace this way back to, the earliest days of physical retail, but that stuck with me. And I've always used that framework when I think about things for myself, if that's the funnel people go through. So I really like that. And that's ReFiBuy is a little bit of an homage to that conversation. You can see, this is an exclusive for you. That's an eBay blue. So our logo and the eBay yellow. So we've tried to, it's actually a different green and red for other things. But we tried to kind of pay homage to the good old eBay that we all knew and loved back in the day.
And agentic AI, I kind of know what AI is. I kind of know what agentic AI is, but you're the expert. Tell us, why is it exciting? And more importantly, what sort of things are people going to be using it for in e-commerce that you're hoping to help with?
Yeah, so The way I think about it is a good mental framework. Let me tell you kind of where this started. So, I had you know Spiffy's in good shape. My co-founder is running that, and I took some time off. And I had always wanted to learn more about some of this AI stuff going on, and I got caught up on the LLMs. Well, there's another piece in there in the middle called retrieval augmented generation. They call it RAG, and basically LLMs they know a little bit about everything, but then you can give them a database that kind of helps them narrow their focus, if you will. It also helps with hallucinations because you don't want hallucinations, people buying the wrong thing or something like that. And then Anthropic came out with a really good paper that kind of describes how you can take a little LLM and a retrieval augmented generation and then give it some tools and it can go do stuff for you. And that's an agent. So for me, an agent is something that actually goes and does something for you. And then they had some frameworks, and there's one called an evaluator where you can actually have, certainly you over time running in, you kind of know this business. Let's say you were listing your shirt. If it didn't have a brand in it, we may argue over what we think the brand is. Well, let's say we had 3 little agents, and they're like digital workers, is how I think about them. You could hire 3 little agents to go think about that, and maybe they come back. 2 of them come back with the same answer, but one comes with a different one. Well, that's interesting. That's called an evaluator network. And you now know that, well, 2 of them voted for this way and 1 voted this way. It's most likely the one that 2 voted for, things of that nature. So I was reading that, and there's a series of challenges we have in e-commerce that require a lot of outsourced people. And I started thinking customer service, listing. At ChannelAdvisor, we have this huge problem around catalog. There's constantly new marketplaces coming up and integrating with them. Wouldn't it be nice to have a digital worker just to go do that for you and just say, hey, here's this exciting new, the clever people at Miracle have turned up 3 new marketplaces. Just go figure out what those are and go start selling stuff over there. So I started thinking there's a million ways you could apply this in the world of e-commerce that would, and then also as I've always kept a toe in e-commerce. I do a podcast with Jason Goldberg called the Jason and Scot Show. And I feel like we've kind of stagnated in the last 10 years in e-commerce. The eBay you and I knew and loved is kind of like, it's still alive, but it's like not really done anything super innovative. Even Amazon, I think the shopping experience is degraded because of all the advertising they have. And they have so many listings, you can't find what you're looking for. That research, the way it's broken is if you go find something, one of the ones we built a prototype on is pickleball paddles. But you go to Amazon, you kind of have to get to a product. The search engine is so broken. You kind of have to say, and then you find a product and it's like, it's not what you want, but it's at least 3 steps away. Then so you have to skip research and go to find. And then you're like looking at that and you're like, okay, now I've learned about the product. Now I need to go back up and search for these things. And then you come back down. It's just like your journey is all messed up. It's absolutely not research, find, buy. It's find, research, find, research, find, buy. And it shouldn't be.
I know what you mean. I get stuck in this cycle of not knowing what the thing I want is called, doing a search for it, finding something that's half it, and then refining the keywords myself to go back and search again. And I'm going in a constant circle trying to find a widget that just because I don't know what the name of it is.
Yeah, and the pickleball example, just to kind of give people a real tangible advance, is like maybe you see another player and they've got this, I've got big hands, and maybe you see this paddle they have, and you see the brand, and and who knew that was called an elongated, right? That's the word they chose, right? So everything you buy has its own vocabulary and its whole own way, and there's no like IEEE standard for product catalog. So started the company with, I found an engineer that used to work at ChannelAdvisor, was no longer there. He had worked on this problem, some of these problems, and he did a prototype, and basically a bunch of the stuff we would previously have to hire people to do around products and the catalog and all that kind of stuff. We were able to get that done without any human. The agents can do the work of a human much faster and cheaper, and in many cases better, because if you end up, there's a lot of these gray areas in e-commerce, and the gray areas work really well for these agents because they are themselves subjective, and you can maybe one of them has a little open AI brain in it, another one has Claude, and another one has a Mistral or whatever it is. You can do some really cool stuff with this that are not as easy, and you don't have to train them. The training is in the prompt or the code. So unlike a human, where if you spin this up, you have to constantly train them. They get sick and leave. They, they're much easier to manage than a team of outsourced humans.
Yeah. So this is all really interesting, but I know it's still early days for you. And I believe you're going to be launching some demo capabilities in a closed invite only experience soon. For anyone that's interested, how do they get hold of you? And more importantly, who should be interested? Is it a brand owner? Is it a large retailer? Is it someone that owns a marketplace? Is it partners like your old company, Channel Advisor, or Rhythm, as I should call them now? Maybe they'd like to incorporate your technology into their solution. Who should be interested? And how do they get hold of you?
You nailed it all. So if anyone wants to get a hold of us, I'm just Scott with 1T at ReFiBuy.ai. And if you go to ReFiBuy.ai, you can see our wait list. You can also, we're very prolific on LinkedIn, so you can find us. We'd love for you to find us and follow us on our LinkedIn company page, which is just ReFiBuy. And then in startups, we use this term ICP, ideal customer profile. So if you're a retailer, probably over 5 million turnover US a year, and brands, it's really not your scale, it's the number of SKUs you have. So if you have over 250-ish, kind of 200 SKUs, then that would be good. Vendors, certainly if vendors have issues where the way I think about it is, if you're doing any outsourcing, we think we can have an agent do that for you. So we'd like to talk about it and understand. I don't know, when I left Rhythm or Channel Advisor, we had a couple hundred folks in Bulgaria doing a lot of things. So they're certainly on our list to call when we get things launched. And then, ultimately, we think there's going to be this future where the big billion-trillion-dollar companies come out with agents, and those agents are going to be multi-use, right? So they're going to do shopping, travel, they'll order food for you. They'll order services for your car. So they'll contact a firm like Spiffy. So they're going to try to be one for everything. But when they do the shopping, this is going to be, I think we're going to have them, I think Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, there's going to be, probably Perplexity. I think a lot of the challenger OpenAI / ChatGPT, they'll be in the mix. Probably Anthropic. It's going to be like chaos before it kind of settles down, kind of like e-commerce was. So there's going to be an explosion of options of things shopping for you. And we think we can help put in the rails for that. So we don't think we can compete up at that level. That's going to be like $1 trillion kind of companies like battling it out. But, we think that to prepare yourself for that day, there's a lot you can do. We can solve your problems today, but the nice artifact of that is if we help you clean up your catalog or streamline your customer service or have an agent that can do customer service, then that will, maybe it talks to consumers today, but then it can do what we would call agent to agent in the near future. So there's lots of things to think about as we get to this kind of, futuristic things, are, digital agents are shopping for you on your behalf. So that's where we're going to be building towards.
Really exciting and interesting, and we'll be keeping in touch, obviously, Scott, because we want to be writing about this as it happens. But in the meantime, anyone that's interested, it's refibuy.ai, and we'll put the links below the video. Scott, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Chris, and look forward to hopefully we'll scale up quickly, and I'll be able to get across the pond and come to see you at a show or something like that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thanks.